Solo leveling has 17 insane gods like this giant dragon and this freaky bug lady. But we can't talk about solo leveling gods without talking about the granddaddy of them all, the Absolute Being. See, the Absolute Being was the ultimate god with the power to create life itself, and at the dawn of time, he split light and darkness into two groups of gods, the rulers and the monarchs. Except that he wasn't a very nice guy, because he created the rulers to protect the world and the monarchs to destroy it, which forced them to fight each other forever. The worst thing is that he did it all for fun. Well, the fun didn't last long because the rulers eventually ganged up and killed him. I mean, why wouldn't they? And then the rulers used the Absolute Being's all-powerful tools to break the power balance and beat the monarchs into hiding. But you guessed it, the monarchs would eventually return to destroy the world. So it's a good thing our hero Sung Jinwoo joins the hunters to help save the world, right? Well, unfortunately, Jinwoo is insanely weak. That is, until a magical program called the System gives Jinwoo the ability to level up. And that's where solo leveling's main story starts. But the big twist is that leveling up is all a part of a plan to make Jinwoo strong enough to take on the powers of a god. And by the end of this video, you'll know all about the god who gave Jinwoo's powers, 17 other powerhouse gods, and just how insane Jinwoo's new powers are. Now, when Jinwoo finally leveled up enough to take on the 100th floor of the nasty Demon Castle dungeon, things really hit the fan, cause guess who was waiting for him on the 100th floor? That's right, the first monarch to show up in the story, Baron, the monarch of White Flames. And Baron was not a pushover. He immediately staggered Jinwoo with a powerful strike. He shot lightning from his mouth, and he even summoned a demon army for backup. Jinwoo was in serious trouble, but with a little help from the demon princess Asil Radaru, he managed to cut off Baron's arm and kill him with a brutal blow to the jaw. But watch out for Rakan, the monarch of Fangs, because he's even stronger. In fact, his very presence strikes fear into the hearts of experienced hunters, and I believe it after watching him dominate Thomas Andre, America's top hunter. Seriously, Thomas even broke his neck, but Rakan just shrugged it off. And in addition to his rapid healing abilities, Rakan can use telekinesis to hurl heavy objects around the battlefield like they're nothing. Of course, Rakan's craziest ability is his beastly spiritual body transformation, which lets him transform partially or fully into a giant white wolf so strong it almost killed Jinwoo. But despite his ferocious abilities, Rakan is a coward who runs from strong enemies if he thinks he's gonna lose. That's why he begged for mercy when Jinwoo crushed him. But Jinwoo responded by killing him in just 4 hits. And don't get me wrong, Rakan is scary, but the Monarch of Plagues is even scarier. Cause not only does Korisha give off murderous vibes, but her massive bug monster transformation is the creepiest thing I've seen all day. Not to mention that she uses parasites to turn dead people into battle slaves. Ew. But that's not all. She can also whip up deadly toxins, throw down with giant green hands made of mana, and punch hard enough to make Jinwoo bleed. In fact, she's so strong that she can hold down the Ant King Shadow Beru like a baby. It's hard to believe that Korisha is considered one of the weakest monarchs because she still ranks among solo leveling's toughest characters. So I can see why she thought she could beat Jinwoo by teaming up with Rakan and the Frost Monarch, but even her regenerative healing powers weren't enough to stop Jinwoo's mutilation skill from slicing her into a bug kebab. Korisha's powers are cool, but the Frost Monarchs are even cooler. Get it? Because even though the Frost Monarch prefers to pull strings from the shadows, his ice magic is badass. Not only can he conjure ice waves and storms, but he can turn ice into weapons, shields, or monsters. And on top of that, he can put people to sleep by snapping his fingers. When it comes to speed, the Frost Monarch is so fast that he can easily dodge attacks from Go Gunmi, who was Korea's strongest S-rank hunter in his younger years. And he even keeps Jinwoo on his toes in their second battle. And let's not forget that his spiritual body manifestation technique turns him into a buff boyish elf who can hit like a truck. Unfortunately, the Frost Monarch's magic and cunning tactics couldn't save him from getting crumpled when Jinwoo awakens as the second Shadow Monarch. Now, I can't wait to talk about how Jinwoo became the new Shadow God. But Jinwoo isn't the only hero with the power to kill a god, and you won't believe what happened to Tarnak, the Monarch of the Iron Body. See, Tarnak was a really arrogant monarch who hated humans, so he thought Jinwoo was unfit to be the new Shadow Monarch because of his human origins. But the irony is that deep down, Tarnak knew just how inferior he himself was compared to Jinwoo. Sure, Tarnak can morph into a huge armored golem with flaming green hair by using spiritual body manifestation, but even the mightiest monarchs can fall to a smart strategy. And that's exactly what happened when Tarnak fell into a trap set by Thomas Andre and Jinwoo that cut his telepathic link to Antares and pitted him 1v3 against Thomas and 2 shadow monsters Jinwoo had recruited into his army, Beru and Belion. The powerhouse trio quickly beat Tarnak, and it's funny that even though Tarnak hated Jinwoo so much, he was the only only enemy monarch that Jinwoo didn't have to kill himself. On the other hand, we have Legia, the monarch of beginning, who even had Jinwoo shaking in his boots when they met in the Japan Crisis arc much earlier in the story. In fact, Legia was so strong that he could have easily defeated Jinwoo back then if he wasn't shackled in mana-draining chains. Also, in the solo leveling light novel, Jinwoo could barely breathe in Legia's presence. Now that's what you call power. The scary thing is that even with his mana depleted, Legia could unleash deadly bursts of wind pressure with his fists, so Jinwoo was lucky his power was restrained. But why exactly was Legia chained up to begin with? Apparently after the rulers killed the Absolute Being way back when, they imprisoned Legia to tip the odds against the monarchs and kept him locked up ever since. But obviously, Legia really wanted to escape, so when he met Jinwoo, he offered to help him in the upcoming war, and to prove he was telling the truth, he cast a Pledge of Honesty spell so that they couldn't lie to each other. However, Jinwoo got suspicious when Legia wouldn't say if he'd also help humanity. And then, Jinwoo saw an Essence Stone, an item that makes creatures want to kill humans, embedded in Legia's neck. Jinwoo realized that Legia could wipe out an insane number of people if he got loose, so he decided to kill the King of Giants before he became a threat. Now, one god who Jinwoo had a tougher time killing was Yagamant, the monarch of Transfiguration, and Yagamant was technically the last monarch that Jinwoo killed. Yagamant mostly lurked in the shadows, so most of his powers are a mystery, but that's because, unlike the other monarchs, Yagamant didn't have a human vessel, which prevented him from using his full power on Earth. However, when Yagamant joined Antari's vision of the human world, he tried to help beat Jinwoo by opening numerous portals that unleashed the monarch's dragon armies, except that Jinwoo embarrassed him by using Dragon Sphere, an ability that hits weaker opponents with intense feelings of panic and despair. Basically, the move devastated Yagamant and the dragon armies so that Jinwoo could focus everything he had into beating Antares, the strongest enemy god of them all. And after that, Jinwoo time traveled to the past to kill Yagamant anyways. What a guy. Of course, every monarch we've talked about so far is nothing compared to Antares, the monarch of destruction. Because Antares is the strongest and oldest of the monarchs, he's solo leveling's final boss, and his raw strength is even greater than the god who gave Jinwoo his powers. But that's just the tip of the iceberg, because Antares can use Breath of Destruction to destroy both mortal enemies and shadow soldiers with explosive fire. What's crazier is that he can morph into a human-dragon hybrid, or a giant red dragon that even makes the enormous dragon Kamish look like a baby. And let's not forget that he has the same Dragon Sphere ability as Jinwoo, which practically makes him untouchable to weaker enemies. But despite his incredible power and love of destruction, Antares also has a sense of honor and he's happy to negotiate with tough opponents. So at the end of his epic fight with Jinwoo, he actually tries to negotiate a deal, except that Jinwoo has other plans and replies by crushing Antares with one last hit before the rulers show up to finish him off, finally ending the Eternal War. Of course, Jinwoo could never have defeated Antares if it wasn't for Ashbourne, the original Shadow Monarch, the god who gave Jinwoo his powers. But before unpacking Ashbourne's crazy backstory, we need to know more about the monarch's enemies, the rulers, because believe it or not, Ashbourne used to be one of them. While the individual rulers remain mysterious, we know that they control heavenly armies of silver knights, that they can only enter the human world through human vessels, and that their telekinetic power, ruler's authority, can pull things with the power of a black hole. But despite their powers, they still failed to protect humanity when the monarchs attacked. So they used the Cup of Reincarnation, one of the Absolute Being's tools, to rewind time 10 years, only to keep failing over and over until the Cup's power was almost used up. The rulers were desperate, so when they were just about down to their last rewind, they decided to connect Earth to dungeons full of dangerous magic beasts so that humanity could become strong enough to survive the monarch's attack. And around that time, Sun Jinwoo became a hunter and started grinding to become a literal shadow god without even knowing it. Now forget what you thought you knew about the monarchs, because the story of Ashbourne, the first Shadow Monarch, is something else altogether. See, Ashbourne isn't just a god, he's the most important god in solo leveling. And Ashbourne's story starts way back at the dawn of time when the Absolute Being created the rulers and the monarchs. Like I said earlier, back then Ashbourne was a ruler, not a monarch. In fact, he was the strongest ruler. The problem is that when all the other rulers rebelled against the Absolute Being, Ashbourne stayed loyal to his creator. The other rulers didn't like that, so they attacked Ashbourne, left him for dead, and killed the Absolute Being while Ashbourne was out of the picture. The twist is that the Absolute Being had hidden a crazy power in Ashbourne's body that transformed him into the Shadow Monarch before he could die. This gave Ashbourne the absurd shadow powers we're going to talk about in just a moment. And boy oh boy did it throw a wrench in the ruler's plans, because Ashbourne switched sides to team up with the monarchs and restored the balance of power. However, when the monarchs got uneasy about Ashbourne's power, Baran and Rakan tried to kill him. Am failed. Then the rulers came to Ashbourne and begged him to forgive them, but Ashbourne didn't know what to do, so he retreated into hiding to rebuild his armies. The rulers took advantage of the power vacuum to crush the monarchs, but centuries later, the monarchs regrouped to attack Earth, and our confused friend Ashbourne joined them. Except that Ashbourne wasn't truly on the side of the monarchs who once betrayed him. His real motive was just to find his place in the universe and make his mark, so he began looking for a human vessel who could inherit and use his powers in the human world. And that's when he discovered Sung Jinwoo. Ashbourne gradually became attached to Jinwoo, he chose him as his heir, and he decided to stand with the rulers after all. So he gave Jinwoo all his godly powers. Jinwoo became the second Shadow Monarch, and I'm not kidding when I say that the powers Jinwoo got from Ashbourne are godly. Because on top of intense physical strength and telekinesis, the OG Shadow Monarch had insane shadow powers. I mean, his shadow extraction ability let him add the shadows of the dead to his army, Shadow Exchange let him teleport across huge distances, and he could use shadow preservation to store and monitor his collection of shadows. Even better, his Monarch's domain ability boosted the strength of all his fighting shadows by 50%. Jinwoo inherited all these powers, but guess what? His godly powers go even deeper. Cause he can cover himself in jet black armor, increase his speed by 30% with the Quicksilver ability, and he's so stealthy he can practically turn invisible. He can also hypnotize people, manipulate memories, talk with monsters, and he doesn't age. Not to mention that he has regenerative healing powers and can carry unlimited items since he's the player of the system, or that he has the same Dragon Sphere ability as Antares, plus a devastating mutilation technique. And that's how Jinwoo became so overpowered that even the gods can't touch him. But if you thought Jinwoo was overpowered, just wait till you see this video about what would happen if One Punch Man fought Goku. Click it!